How's it going, everyone? Spencer here with a brand new video, and today we are talking all about, I'm sure no one is surprised, Shin Megami Tensei V. Yes, the game that was never coming out, maybe coming out, probably coming out, is now actually coming out. And the whole point of today's video is not actually to wrap up what happened at E3, although Nintendo and Atlus Japan have been just oozing news and videos literally every day this week. And pretty much every day, at least for the next couple hundred days, there will be brand new content for this. So if you're someone who is definitely worried or privy to avoiding spoilers, definitely be on the lookout. There's going to be lots of gameplay, and I'm sure even more information coming out through Famitsu interviews, Game Informer interviews, and a ton of other places for people to find information. But one big piece of information that actually hasn't really officially come out yet, but I really wanted to talk to all of you about, because even though this game is dated, it's coming out 11/11/21 in Japan and 11/12/21 in America and the rest of the West, is that people haven't really talked about the fact that, hey, this game's done. And it's really crazy to think about. It was such like a nebulous idea because they had done such a good job of staying silent on this game, not really talking about it too much, and they were definitely buried down in their work in a way I've never really seen Atlus do this before, but they never showed us real gameplay for this until they finished the game. Which, on one sense, like, kudos to them. That takes an insane amount of commitment and just faith in your work. Like, besides people who work at Atlus and Nintendo, no other outside parties have really seen this game, and this just really goes to show that whatever vision they had for the initial idea of Shin Megami Tensei V, they're really hammering it home with this one of like, no, we're not going to show it to you so you can compare footage from 4 years ago to now. All the initial footage before last year had basically just been nothing but Unreal Engine 4 concept teasers, and no one's going to be like looking at it like, oh, what's Odin's really doing? No, it's like, here's a bunch of demons, they're in Unreal, give us a bunch of time, it's going to take a while. And literally almost everything we saw last year, we've already seen in the finalized version of the game now. So what do I mean by when I say the game is done? Basically, at this current state in development, the game is content complete, and what that means is that Atlus has the entirety of the game playable from start to finish. It's not gone gold yet, they haven't printed it on Switch, they're not waiting for... they're not just like sitting in a warehouse getting dusty. So Atlus Japan has finished the entirety of the game's internal development for the Japanese version. That means the game is completely playable, no real things are being added to it. There may be little quality of life features. All the voice acting, though, is done for the game in Japanese. And that basically means all that's really left to do until November is to keep squashing bugs, polishing the game, making it run as technically well as possible on the Switch. And the big factor is working on that Western version, because this game is going to be launching obviously in Japan, but is also going to be featuring in the Western version that comes out at the same time, English voiceover, English subtitles, French, Italian, German, and Spanish subtitles. So that is a really, really big undertaking that has been worked on for the past couple of weeks and even early into late 2020. So just like to give a little bit of a heads up for the Western version, voiceover recording, I do not know if it's done, but I know has definitely been worked on since late last year, and they're making really, really good progress. So it's basically just going to be getting this game done and ready for everyone as quickly as humanly possible. And one of the ways that Atlus Japan has always worked is your localizing it doesn't really start until that game's done in Japan. So that really makes me wonder what the dev timeline was like in terms of, it probably would have been possible to show gameplay last July, but I think it was a really big, strong power play, whether it have been Nintendo's choice or Atlus Japan, to just hold it for this E3. Hold it to as late as possible before this game is coming out. We are now less than 5 months from the international release date, and this is awesome because guess what? You have all of this media footage, you have all of this time, and in a year where they are not drowning in games, and the Switch is probably going to have one of its biggest banger years ever. Obviously, the PlayStation 4, 5, and Xbox consoles have a ton of stuff going on, but I think coming out of E3, Nintendo definitely took a big stand of, hey, we may not have a million Marios and Zeldas this year, but we're going to hit people hard with either obscure stuff or things that are going to resonate with a lot of people. And just thinking of first-party titles alone, or exclusives like SMT5, you've got Metroid, you've got WarioWare, you've got Advance Wars, you've got so many things just coming only to Switch, and that's not even talking about Pokemon. There's a Pokemon game coming out in the same month as SMT5. They're really in the fall going to be just hitting people hard. Honestly, I think from September to December with Advanced Wars, they are just going to be trying to make it every week. There's something someone is going to want that is only on the Switch, and I think that's a really interesting thing that I don't know if was planned during quarantine, it just kind of happened because of the way 2021 game development has been. But Atlas Japan, I think, is in a really interesting position of, obviously, it doesn't have as much hype as Metroid Dread. It's obviously not going to sell as well as a Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remake, but in terms of getting that hardcore Switch audience and just Atlas fans in general, I have not heard so much discussion about, oh my god, if I didn't have a Switch, I really need one now. And it's really interesting because I think a lot of exclusives that are third-party for Nintendo have not hit as hard as SMT5 is hitting. So it's really been interesting kind of comparing it to other third-party exclusives that maybe hit a little bit softer. Something like Astral Chain I think is kind of getting up there in terms of, yes, it's published by Nintendo, but it's not really like a mainstay name. Other titles like, let's say, Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, possibly, and I hope I'm wrong, No More Heroes 3, and Daemon X Machina. These are like third-party exclusives that I now just realized are all published by Marvelous, but these are all third-party Switch exclusives that, yeah, they're exclusives, but like, no one's buying a Switch for Daemon X Machina unless you're a really big fan of that developer or just got a really big mech thing for it. Whereas like SMT5 is now getting into this spot of, there's a ton of information for this game now. I think every day you're going to get closer to someone being like, oh, this game's either for me or is not for me. I think the E3 showcase was great in terms of not only showing more story for the game, finally showing off what the character looks like in action, showing off tons of gameplay, showing off lots of in-engine footage, and so many other technical aspects I really want to get into. But the whole point of this video is basically just what a power play by Atlas and Nintendo to get this game early. I'm kind of surprised they're not talking about it. I know it's a little weird to actually even kind of talk about it like this because, hey, SMT5 is done. Shout it from the rooftops. This game that everyone wanted to act apparently like was never coming out, even though it was always going to come out, is actually done, but they probably just don't want to vocalize it too much because there's an asterisk next to it. It's done. If you're Japanese, you can play the hell out of that game from beginning to end right now. It's just not done being localized. So that's kind of an interesting one of, I can't think of a game as prominent as this that has been held for Japanese release just for a worldwide launch. Because even something on a much larger scale but similar worldwide releases, like Final Fantasy VII Remake and 15, those all release internationally at the same time, but Square Enix, their dev pipeline has localization working alongside the actual dev team. Because like I said, the whole thing with Atlas is you are not localizing our game until we have a finished script because they don't want to waste anyone's time in the West. I mean, hey, that's their own thing for it, but it has definitely slowed the development pipeline for it. So big ups to Nintendo for having that kind of ability to tell Atlas Japan, because I bet you Atlas Japan would love nothing more than to drop this game this summer and then in the fall for the rest of the world. But holding it for that international release is going to give it such a pop, because guess what? Fans are all going to universally come together and not be spoiled, hopefully. Not have to worry about someone having the game before they do. Like, the worst case scenario we have is if someone in Australia flies to Japan and finds that the Japanese version has English on it, which it probably won't. It's like, there will be so few hurdles to getting spoiled about this game getting into everyone's hands. It's such a good thing, and I don't normally say this, but thank you so much, Nintendo, for making Atlas Japan. Not make this a Switch exclusive that I could really care less about, play this game on whatever system possible, but they definitely did financially back this game to make it an exclusive for quite a while. And the other thing, though, just thank you for making this a worldwide event. Just not making this another random Switch JRPG that like a couple 10,000 people play and then it fades off into the ether. I think with this having that November early pre-Thanksgiving hype, like this is, in my opinion, and I'm very, very biased, this is a big event game. This is a Nintendo AAA backed Switch exclusive, which you don't see very often, especially with role-playing games and especially with Atlus, because guess what? The only time where Atlus themselves go AAA is for PlayStation games. They have not done a AAA Nintendo published game like this since probably Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and even though I would count that as AAA, I know a lot of people probably wouldn't due to the fact that it wasn't dubbed. It's definitely not the most worldwide appeal title, with it being about idols and stuff like that. But either way, that is the whole point of this video. I just kind of wanted to talk about the fact that SMT5 is done. Hip hip hooray, everyone be happy. Do not expect any delays. Like, there would have to be such a cataclysmic event to make this game get delayed at this point, because of how far along Japan is obviously at the point of development, and even with the localizers. They've been working on this so hard for the last year plus and stuff, and I have nothing but faith that the English version will be great. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I can't wait to see more footage for it. I'm really excited to see what all of you think of the English version, especially because of all the rumblings I've been hearing about the English cast. But I'm not allowed to say too much for that. Thank you, by the way, to mysterious friend at Atlus Japan who was able to help me clarify this, because, like I said, this is a thing that's pretty obvious to kind of infer from looking at all the footage, but has definitely not been said officially yet. But I definitely wanted to kind of kick and prod a couple of sources if I could, and I was glad to be able to confirm, yes, it is done in Japan, the game is content complete, because I would hate for someone to look at that date and still think, even though it's less than 5 months away, but what if it gets delayed? Obviously, I can't promise anything, but I've never been more certain in saying, hey, this game is at least done in Japan. Everything is basically in the side of localization, and as long as they can knock it out of the park, this game is coming hell or high water in November. So let's see if I regret these words and deeds and video by the end of the year, but hopefully I will not. Either way, let me all know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of SMT5 being done in development? What do you hope that they can work on with the next 5 months, if they are doing any extra kind of like polishing and bug fixing and stuff like that? Any worries anyone might have now that we're getting closer to release date? I want to hear it all in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, I do a weekly podcast called Shin Megami Tensei Network every Tuesday. And you can help support it by going to patreon.com/SMTN. Helps getting videos like this up early, helps the podcast keep going, pays for hosting fees, blah, 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 blah. Either way, I've taken up more than enough time of everyone's weekend. Have a good time. If you have any questions for me as well, feel free to reach out to me, and I will gladly answer any of them to the best of my ability. Either way, have a good one. I'll see y'all later. Bye.